All right, we are in the airport of Mauritius, the island of Mauritius, but not for the reason most people come to Mauritius. We're actually here changing planes. I don't know that very many people change planes in Mauritius. Mauritius is usually the destination, but we're here about to board a flight to the island of La Réunion. So La Réunion is a little piece of France. It's a department of France down in the Indian Ocean. So really excited to see this little part of France. I think it's probably well traveled too by French people, less so by others. So looking forward to having a look at La Réunion.
Are a wonderful playground for hikers, but to be sure that you're in good physical health and have appropriate gear, always check the weather forecasts.
Can't get over this. Somewhat hilariously, to get some cash, I went to a regular French bank here, a regular French cash machine, and yeah, I pulled out regular regular euros from my French bank account, as if at home. So here we are in the European Union. This may be the furthest outpost, I believe, or one of the furthest outposts of the actual European Union. So we are in the Marché de Chaudron, which is the main market in the capital area of Saint-Denis, the main outdoor market for the capital area, Chaudron. And we're used to the French open-air markets that happen on a regular basis in mainland France, but let's see what a open-air market, Sunday morning market in tropical France looks like. So, Marché de Chaudron. We've got a flower. There's Kathy. Here's a coconut milk. Somebody preparing coconut milk here. So he's filling bottles. She's filling bottles with coconut milk. This man is hand cutting the coconut, and it sounds like they're speaking Réunion Creole language, dialect, Creole Réunionnaise. Filling this bottle of coconut milk. So here's samosas of various kinds. Samosa with names don't recognize. Stuffed chilies. Oh, that's interesting. I'll have to try that. Chili stuffed with tuna. Okay. Pork stuffed chili. These are stuffed chilies. Chili stuffed with tuna. Okay, so we have fritters, beignets, vegetable beignet, legume, bananas. And what's this? Cinnamon. There's cinnamon. Cinnamon sticks, which is of course like a tree bark. Manioc. And something called songe, which looks like a kind of like a weird tropical leek. We're gonna have to look up what that is. Here's more vanilla. Just lots of vanilla. Vanilla Bourbon. They're all called vanilla Bourbon. I don't know what the difference is between vanilla de Madagascar. Maybe the Bourbon is from this island, because this island, Réunion, was once called Bourbon. That's obviously what you buy here, is vanilla. I did not expect that. Look at all this vanilla. That's astonishing. Look at all this vanilla. What do you do with all of that vanilla? So it's 10 euros for 10 little sticks. So it's about €1 a stick. Although it depends on the type. This one here is 20 euros for 5 sticks. They're longer sticks, that's why. So fruit. But lots of herbs. And I don't recognize all of them. Chilies. More chilies. You don't see any chilies in a market in mainland France. Lots of eggs. I have no idea what that is. Nice music blasting. A mountain of pineapples. Really cool. Okay, this is soybeans. Soybean sprouts. I didn't know that that's what that looked like. Okay, so here we are in the Chaudron market of Réunion, and I'm going to try some local snacks. I'm going to have a stuffed chili with pork, but I'm going to wash it down with some fresh sugarcane juice that I'm going to ask this guy to press for me and see what happens with that. So 1 cup there. So he's going to press my sugarcane juice right now. I'm surprised how much juice 1 sugar cane makes. It's really quite juicy. All right, so here we go. Chili, stuffed chili with pork. Nothing better to wash that down with than sugarcane juice. So here we go. It's really good. I'm not sure if it's a proper chili in the jalapeno sense or more of like a pepper, but it's not that spicy. Okay, here we go. Delicious sugarcane juice. It's not as sweet as you might expect. It's actually just kind of a sweet water, more or less. So, cheers. So here we are on the beach at L'Hermitage, one of the beaches on La Réunion. There aren't that many beaches here. And in general, La Réunion is known for being shark infested. So you're not allowed to just go swimming in most places of the island, actually. It's forbidden. They have specific beaches which they've cordoned off and put a net out there to protect against sharks. And you can see the people here. This is one of the beaches where you're allowed to swim. But there's a sign that says swimming forbidden. And there's another similar sign over there, which means in this particular section you're not allowed to swim. So I guess sharks can come here. And here's a group of, or here's a hut of lifeguards, and it says shark vigilance, reinforced shark vigilance. So it's basically some lifeguards that are especially looking out for shark attack. Saying that, yeah, I don't know, there's people here on the edge, people snorkeling out there, and plenty of people bathing. Yeah, it's a nice beach. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a white powder beach like in some places you might expect in the tropics, but it's good enough. And we're about to get in the water, and we're going to also bring our snorkels. So we're going to have fun. All right, we're at the Belvedere of Maïdo, which is up at 2,200 meters. And it's supposed to be one of the most breathtaking viewpoints on the island. I can feel the altitude, but as you can see, today we get a view of fog, although it's one of those type of mountain cloud situations where the clouds are blowing around quite vigorously, and every once in a while there's a gap or a blue spot. So who knows, maybe we'll be lucky, and while we're here we'll have a brief moment of open sky to see the dramatic view of Piton de Neige, or the Snow Mountain, as it's called, the highest peak, which would ordinarily be visible from here. Let's see what happens. And well, now I can maybe just about see the valley below with some houses. There's been a slight reprieve in the fog. Let's see, wait a few more minutes, see what happens. So we can now see down into the caldera, or into one of the cirques. I feel optimistic. Okay, well, we came back to the Belvedere of Maïdo, and finally the clouds have cleared, and wow, Look at this unbelievable view of the entire interior of the island. 360-degree panoramic of a lit sign at the airport. Oh well, we tried. That's what it looks like. So up on this mountain we do have some very unusual plants which I've never seen before. These trees, I just did a Google search, it says fierce lancewood. Never heard of that. Have to look again. Not entirely sure. It's got a kind of moss on it. And we only started seeing this tree once we got up sort of 3/4 of the way up the mountain. We're at the black sand beach at Le Tang Salé, which means salty pond. And the sand, when it's dry, I would say looks more green. Sort of a dark green kind of a color. A little bit green-gray. But then when you come see the sand wet, it really is black. It's really something. Once it's wet, it's properly black. With a touch of green. The water here, by the way, is very warm. I struggle to think of another time the water was just so warm that you could walk in. So we're at a place called Takamaka on the eastern side of Réunion. Takamaka sounds to me more Polynesian than something I'd expect here, but what do I know? But have a look at this. Isn't this something? This is really amazing. I've seen waterfalls and I've seen green mountains. I don't think I've seen so many waterfalls on green mountains. This is an old volcano crater. Look at that waterfall way up there. Just unbelievable. Look at this. It's just shocking. There's more waterfall than there is mountain, practically. And then down there, mysterious green valleys and pools where they could have filmed Land of the Lost. We are right here in the commune of Salazie, in the middle of Réunion, a little bit on the eastern side. Well, we've just arrived in the village of Hell-Bourg, and we're in the middle of La Réunion Island. We're up at 1,000 meters on one of the cerques. Basically, this is a village described as a Creole village, built essentially in one of the older craters, volcanic craters of La Réunion. And it's got this very interesting, typical architecture that they've got here. There's our locals drinking beer. It's about noon, so I guess they're allowed. And we're going to go to this restaurant called Tea Chouchou, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, which is a well-reputed Creole food restaurant. Hell-Bourg, 1,000 meters in the fog and mist in the center of La Réunion. Okay, we're having our first Réunion meal. Proper Réunionnais food, because last night we had pizza and that doesn't really count. So we've got things we have absolutely no idea what to expect. We ordered something called rugai de moru. That is codfish in a kind of a étouffée or stew style. And I ordered a sausage dish, which has a similar name, rugai, but spelled slightly different. That's masculine and that's feminine. I don't know why, but maybe they're just both stewed, some form of stewing. We've got white rice and lentils and some chilies. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Very delicious. The codfish is in a kind of a stewed preparation, quite strongly seasoned. Very, very savory. The same thing with the sausage. Nicely seasoned. Everything's just got a little kick to it. This is a chili condiment. It looks like it's mostly out of cucumber, but quite a kick to it. And the lentils are not spicy, but it's all in all very savory and very delicious. Perfect with a cold, what they call dodo beer. They keep referring to it as doo-doo, D-O-D-O, but the actual brand is bourbon. Ah, I just noticed it's a dodo bird.
Yes, love.
Say that again.
Yes, love.
Yeah. Duh, okay. Duh. It's doo-doo, it's dodo bird beer bourbon. Here's the most spectacular waterfall here, even for people from Switzerland, on this very verdant tropical road. That is really something. Here we have something very special. We're in the island, the town of Piton-Sainte-Rose on the island of La Réunion, and we are at the church, a church called Notre Dame de Lave, which means Notre Dame of Lava, Our Lady of Lava. And this is a church that is surrounded by lava from a volcanic eruption that happened in 1977. The volcano up there in the mist erupted, as it has done, and the lava came down the mountainside. As you can see here, came to the church, but according to what's written inside, it did not enter the church because it had lost enough fluidity by that time that it could not actually enter the church, but it did surround the church. And so now the church is completely surrounded by lava rock. And the church does not look in too good a shape, but it's still being used as a church inside. But this is something really quite special. We're at a place called Onze Cascades, so Waterfall Beach. And this island is so unbelievably lush and full of these plants, which I don't recognize. It looks almost prehistoric to us, but I guess that's the effect of it being in the southern hemisphere. Relatively remote island. I don't recognize these kind of palmetto type of trees we've got here. I'm sure a botanist who's watching this, if ever one does, will immediately be able to tell, but I can't. I can hear the sound of the waves crashing. And we're descending on a staircase to this waterfall beach, not far, just a few minutes down the coast from the church that was surrounded by lava. So let's see what happens when we get to this beach in a moment. I barely call it a beach. It's very rocky and obviously quite new lava. Still very porous. And here's the Indian Ocean. On waves crashing onto a black, rocky lava coast. Whew, big waves. There's one of the cascades of Cascade Beach, Onze Cascade, and there are a ferocious amount of mosquitoes here. I stopped for a moment to take a photo and they just swarmed around my legs. Well, there will be no swimming at this beach. Let those waves work their magic for the next, I don't know, 30 million years. And then the surface of the future can come here and enjoy a nice black sand beach. But today, and for the next millions of years, we've got rocks. Doesn't stop this guy from seeing what he can catch out there. It's another one of the very many weird plants here. If you could crossbreed a palm tree and a pine tree, you might get something like this. Palm tree bearing what look like pine cones. Very strange and prehistoric looking. More botany here. So we've got these pine cone bearing palm trees that just land on a rock, I guess, the seed, and it just spreads these tentacles. Might call it something like an octopus palm. It's my nickname for it. And then over here, we've got another kind of more traditional looking palm tree that seems to just look like the roots melted. Or, yeah, a coconut melted and a tree grew. So right next to the beach, we've got these cascades. Wow, truly something. If anybody ever saw the TV show from the 1970s, Land of the Lost, that's what this reminds us of. Really spectacular. Really primitive feeling. So here we have something quite special. We are on the south coast of the island, and we're in the lava fields area. And this is a lava field from an eruption in 2017, only 5 years ago. There's a waterfall in the background, and this island is so wet. We have rivers forming. Here's a raging river torrent coming right down through the lava field, having made its ravine already, making its way all the way down to the sea. And the lava rocks themselves, it's been 5 years, there's not a lot going on here, but you can see some plants are already starting to take root. They've got some lichen or moss on the, I guess it's lichen on the rocks. It's kind of furry. And then some green plants taking hold where life can. Lava fields on La Réunion. Well, good morning. It's a rainy day in Réunion, and we wanted to go see some of the sites, some of the mountain sites, some of the great viewpoints that they have. But it's absolutely rainy. I'll show you in a second. So we're trying to figure out some things we can do that are a little different. So we thought we'd have a look in a typical French supermarket. So this is a Carrefour, a huge Carrefour. That's a typical French supermarket. And we're just curious what there is in a big Carrefour on the island of La Réunion in the South Indian Ocean. You can see a view of the sky and the mountains. So let's go into Carrefour and see how the selection differs or is similar to the selection in a regular mainland French Carrefour. But this is in the town of Saint-Pierre, and when you're in town, other than the palm trees and the different vegetation, you know, just in terms of looking at the cars, license plates, road signs and everything, you don't really feel like you're not in France. You do feel like you're basically just in France. It's terribly humid outside and rainy, but other than that, you wouldn't really know. So let's go in and see what we... One thing that's different is this mega bulk display section, which you don't see. For example, look at this Johnny Walker Red Label whiskey by the pallet. That's really something. Electronics, mobile phones, computers, housewares. Just the big electronics. Don't see that so much. Large screen televisions. Over there, household items and school supplies. And finally, we get to the food area. So here we're in the meat counter. And we have lots of local things. Local sausages and local meat. Some sort of smoked meat. Merguez sausages. Package of merguez sausages for $3.69. Seems slightly more expensive. The cheese section is very comprehensive, and it has a lot of well-known French cheeses, and probably many more cheeses than you'd get anywhere else in sort of the tropics, I'm guessing. But obviously they're bringing a lot of cheeses in from mainland France. You don't get anything like this in South Africa, for example. However, these sort of large wheels of cheese, this sort of bulk. There's Appenzeller cheese from Switzerland. These sort of bulk, giant wheels of cheese. Still more cheese. Cheese from Auvergne. So, Tomate, Alpine cheese, Tom. You don't lack for, oh, look at all this, way more. Okay, yeah. So basically, you don't lack for cheese if you live on La Réunion. You have the seafood counter is presented a bit differently, and actually the seafood counter in our Carrefour near Nîmes, I would say is probably even better, which is a little bit ironic because we're on an island. However, they have some amazing looking tuna. Albacore tuna right there, and whole fishes. But the things you get in France would be oysters and shellfish. I'm surprised there are no prawns here. No prawns whatsoever. That's interesting. So in the produce section, what we don't have as many of is what you'd find in the European supermarket are tomatoes. There just aren't as many. Those are those small tomatoes. They call them petite tomate, and they're from Réunion. These are grown here locally. And large tomatoes are also grown in Réunion, according to the sign. $8.49 a kilo. That's very expensive. $7.95 a kilo. So tomatoes in general, most of this produce is grown in Réunion. The aubergine, the courgette, the tomato. It says all of them grown in Réunion. All of them relatively expensive. Here's potatoes grown in Réunion. $3.60 for a kilo. I think that's expensive. Carrots from China. Cabbage, courgette, manioc. Something called little sweet, I guess. Oh, sweet potatoes. All of that grown in Réunion. Here it gets a little bit better. We have a variety of breads and, of course, the ever-present baguette, because we are in France after all. Here's our local beer, officially called bourbon, but which the locals all call doudou, which is the French way of pronouncing dodo because of a dodo bird. On the label, of course, the dodo bird lived on the neighboring island of what's it called? Mauritius. But they seem to have borrowed its iconography for their beer. Now in the beer section, we've got a lot of good Belgian beers, just like you would find in France in Carrefour. Really good, a lot of good Belgian Trappist beers. I see Leffe, I see Duvel, I see Chimay, so you don't want for beer. You can even get bad American beer here, so life is not over. You can get Bud. So beer, plenty of beer. And actually the local beer, the local doudou beer, which is stacked up high, is very tasty. I would call it a good beer. Fischer is sort of a German-style beer or Alsatian-style beer from Strasbourg, and that's a very tasty beer. I see that. The wine section is much smaller than, even though it's several aisles, it's much smaller than what you'd find in France. Kathy told me already, she says it's The wines are a little bit more, but not a lot more. Which means you can still find bottles of European wine here for €3, 4 or 5 euros, 4 euros, 6 euros. Hello everybody. We just finished a wonderful 5-day trip on the island of La Réunion in the Indian Ocean. And as Réunion is not very well visited by people outside of the French-speaking world, or outside of France even, it's certainly not well visited by Anglo-Saxons or by people from the English-speaking world. And I thought I would make a little video kind of explaining the island and my impressions of it, or our impressions of it after 5 days. We're actually standing on the island of Mauritius. We're just finishing up a trip on Mauritius as well. And in a separate video, I'll do a comparison between the two, which I also found very interesting. But first, a little bit about Réunion, or La Réunion, as it's formally called. La Réunion is a part of France. It's an integral part of France. It's actually one of the French departments, département, which means it has the very same status within France as any other French department, any other French city. It would be completely equivalent to the US state of Hawaii, which is also an offshore tropical island, but has absolutely the same political status as the rest of the other 49 US states. So Réunion has the very same situation and the same status. So when you're in Réunion, you're in France. When you enter La Réunion, you're entering the European Union, and all of the rules apply there as if you were flying into Paris. The currency is the euro, and as I'll explain, being there is very much like being in metropolitan France. So La Réunion is an island. It's 2,500 plus square kilometers. For people from England, that means it's about the same size as Oxfordshire, and for people from, let's say, the United States, it's about a little bit more than half the size of Rhode Island, maybe twice the size of the island of Oahu, something like that in Hawaii. So it's not very big. It's something like, it's pretty much a round island, something like 70 kilometers across. But imagine half of Rhode Island, or imagine Oxfordshire with volcanic topography in the center, with a live volcano, as a matter of fact, and with mountains reaching up to more than 3,000 meters. And that's amazing. So it's really quite a spectacular island from a visual standpoint. It's absolutely lush and verdant, tropical like you wouldn't believe, just that sort of stereotypically tropical green palm sort of infested island. Because the topography is so dramatic, most of the population is around the coast, and the interior is actually hard to access. There are a few crater valleys called circuses or circles. At least 3 of those, which are former calderas, which have long since gone dormant and grown through with lush green vegetation. And there are some villages up there which you can access by car, and those are really interesting, up at high elevation, a little bit cooler. But definitely the main population is around the circumference, around the coast of this round island. The capital is called Saint-Denis or Saint-Denis at the top. But the population, very broadly speaking, is sort of distributed more or less equally around the island. It means it feels fairly crowded when you're down in the urban areas, if you like. Lots of traffic, lots of cars. It's part of France, so the standard of living is similar to France. It's modern, it's pretty prosperous, and that juxtaposes to some other sort of tropical islands that you might imagine, which are actually developing countries. So Réunion is definitely not. It's definitely a part of Europe in that sense, and you have big supermarkets and all the usual sort of French infrastructure, all the usual French chain brands, chain stores, banks, and so on. You find there, and from that standpoint, our observation was that when you're actually in the towns down near the coast, if you don't see the beach and you don't see the palm trees, you might as well be in France. You wouldn't actually know any different. But that's where the similarities kind of end. The people there are a very wonderful and exotic mix of races. The island was uninhabited when it was discovered. I think it was discovered by the French in the 1700s. Or even the late 1600s, and then populated by or colonized by France, and they developed a sugarcane plantation economy for which they imported enslaved people from Africa to the island to work on the plantations. And after slavery was made illegal, abolished by France, they began importing indentured servants from India and from Asia, just like the British did in similar situations in the Caribbean and the Indian Oceans. That, along with the European indigenous population, basically the descendants of the colonists, means you have an amazing mixture of people. And not so much a mixture in the sense of you've got an X percentage of black people and X percentage of Indians. You do have that, but it's really wonderful to see the sort of just the blend of all skin colors and tones. And I don't know, we'd have to spend more time there to know, but I'm not sure if they make strong racial distinctions. The French census does not ask about race, as I understand it, so there isn't good hard information as to exactly what racial groups you find there. But I think broadly speaking, it's something like 35% African, 25% white, if you like, European, 25% Indian, and small minority of the rest are Asian, let's say Chinese origin or Vietnamese origin. And there is a little bit of a interesting thing here. We have the people, anybody who is born on the island, ever since the island was colonized, just like in other places, are called Creoles, no matter what their race. So they could be white Creoles or black Creoles, and also just like in Louisiana. And the Creoles are the native people of the island and have developed their own cuisine and traditions and music. So it's a really interesting island. Again, feels like France in an infrastructure standpoint in terms of the roads and the signage on the roads and the number plates and everything. It's just exactly like France. Just like when you're in Hawaii, all the signs and license plates look the same. Carrefour supermarket and all the rest. But the people are different. They speak a local dialect of French. Let's call it a Creole French, which is what people speak with each other. And of course, standard French is the official language, but it's very hard to understand. For somebody like me who can speak some French, but not great, I mean, it's really hard to understand local people when they're speaking in their own dialect. But obviously regular French is the language you would use in any kind of formal situation. They've got their own music, or music styles, which vaguely feel Caribbean. You've got some tin pan drumming going on. You've got a kind of a reggae feel to it, but yet a little bit different. Definitely a tropical island kind of vibe to it. We really enjoyed the music. I don't know how old those styles are, or how much they're actually genuinely influenced by, for example, reggae, because of course France also has departments in the Caribbean, so there will have been some mixing. La Réunion is a prosperous island. Like I said, its standard of living is similar to France. I'm told that the main industry of La Réunion, its main industry is being French, which basically means that the civil administration of the island is one of the main employers. So there's lots of civil servants there. I think the island is supported by metropolitan France. There's the traditional industries of vanilla and sugarcane and the other plantation economy things. Well, those all still exist. They still are very proud of their vanilla. You can buy vanilla there. You can visit vanilla plantations. They make rum and so on. So it's sort of like Martinique or Guadeloupe in that sense. But those aren't enough to build a modern, prosperous welfare state. And so France pays a lot of money to Réunion and employs a lot of people to keep Réunion French, if you want to put it like that. The food is very interesting. I was pleasantly surprised that it's different enough from the rest of France. They have their own dishes. They cook a lot of dishes which they call curry, C-A-R-I, with fish or chicken or sausage and different kinds of sauces or curried treatments or gravies made from tomatoes and onions. And it's a little bit spicy, but it's not blow your head off spicy or anything like that, but it's pleasantly piquant, and we really enjoyed the food. So rice and lentils and sort of fish curries, or kind of even a sausage curry that they have. And there's a broad range of those things, and obviously great seafood from that region. Interestingly, a lot of the produce that you see in the supermarket, even if it's normal things like potatoes and tomatoes and so on, are grown on Réunion. So to a good degree, they are self-sufficient. Well, I don't know about statistically if they're self-sufficient, but they do provide the main chain supermarkets with a lot of local produce. And in the supermarket, I did a whole other video of a tour through a Carrefour. You also have the benefit of all of the usual French products. So all the French cheeses, and of course they eat baguette, and because it's France and because it's a modern society, you have restaurants of all types. We had amazing pizza, we had Japanese food. You can have whatever you want there. So Réunion is a really beautiful island. It's stereotypically tropical, sort of a place that looks like they could have filmed Jurassic Park. Dense green, lush foliage, and the vegetation is different. If you're not familiar with the Southern Hemisphere or with the Indian Ocean, they have a lot of endemic species, or ones which are similar to others found in Madagascar, which is 400 and some odd kilometers away. Bromeliads and other types of, I don't know if they're bromeliads, but all sorts of interesting trees and plants which we found very exotic, almost primitive looking. You could imagine dinosaurs roaming around in there. You go up to the volcanic craters, you see unbelievable waterfalls, and just a breathtaking topography that's just hard to even fathom. It's just something straight out of a magazine or something. So I'm really quite surprised that Réunion is not better known, not better traveled to. It's perhaps not on the international tourist radar because Mauritius is nearby, and Mauritius I think is a bit more developed for that sort of international tourism. It has beaches, and that's another thing. Réunion is not known for its beaches. It is along with Mauritius. It's one of the Mascarene Islands, but it's much newer. In a volcanic sense and a geologic sense, and most of the island is made of really rocky shore, black rock, lava rock, completely unapproachable. You can't swim from the shore in the vast majority of the island. There are only a few beaches. They're nice enough, but they're not the stereotypical. In general, they're not the sort of white sand tropical beaches that you'd get in the Maldives or in Seychelles. So I think for that reason, it's maybe less interesting to international tourists who are coming from Europe or other places who want a beach holiday. Mauritius is well set up for that and has the right kind of beaches. I'm standing on one of them right now, actually. But it's very popular amongst the French themselves, and there's lots of mainland French people visiting. There's also lots of sort of mainland French expats living on La Réunion. It's like moving to Hawaii, I suppose, if you're an American, or moving to the British Virgin Islands if you're a Brit, I suppose, something like that. So you get an interesting blend. Anyway, really loved it. Very interesting place. A little hard to get to from a flight standpoint, unless you're coming from France. We actually had to change planes in Mauritius, believe it or not. But interesting island, and well worth a visit, especially if you like hiking and you want to be up in the mountains and see a lot of the interior inland things. Less so if you're interested in the beach or in snorkeling. I think diving and so on you could do if you go off a little bit offshore in a boat, but it's more, I would say, an inland island, if you like.